In the heart of an ancient African village, where the trees whispered old secrets and the river sang lullabies to the moon, there lived a man who laughed at things no man dared speak of. They warned him. They begged him. But pride can be louder than wisdom, and deeper than the river itself. This is his story. A story whispered by the wind, and remembered by the water. Long ago, before the roads were paved and the skies clouded with iron birds, there stood a village nestled at the edge of River Nyoka, a wide, winding river said to be the home of ancient spirits. These were no ordinary tales told to frighten children at dusk. These were truths, passed from mouth to ear, wrapped in reverence and fear. The villagers of Obuma did not drink directly from the river. They did not bathe in it. They did not even whisper at its edge after sundown, for they believed the river spirits listened. Among them lived a man named Okiri. He was tall, broad-shouldered and sharp-tongued, the kind of man whose laughter felt like an insult even when he meant none. A blacksmith by trade, Okiri was known for his strength and fire. But more than anything, he was known for his mockery of all things sacred. Spirits, he'd scoff while hammering steel. If a spirit ever dared show its face, I'd throw it into my forge and shape it into a hoe. The elders warned him. The priestess of the river shrine, Mama Aweel, came to him one night, her cowrie-covered staff shaking with each step. "You mock what you do not understand, Okiri," she said. "The river is older than your bones. It remembers those who insult it." He laughed, louder than the frogs that sang at dusk. "Then let the river remember me. Maybe it can tell its spirits to bring me more customers." The villagers shook their heads. Some whispered behind closed doors that Okiri's fate had already been sealed, not by man, but by the spirits who dwell in the cold bend of the river where sunlight never touched. It began subtly. One morning, a strange fish appeared outside Okiri's hut, silver-scaled, with milky eyes and gills that opened and closed as though gasping for a scream. He thought a child had played a prank and tossed it into the forest. The next day, it happened again. 2 fish this time, stacked like offerings, though no one in Obuma dared offer anything to Okiri. Still he paid no mind. That is, until the 3rd night. The rains had come early. Thunder rumbled like the drums of the ancestors, and the river began to swell. Okiri was returning from his forge when he noticed something. A trail of wet footprints leading up to his door. But it hadn't rained in Obuma yet. The sky was dry, save for the rolling thunder in the distance. He opened his door slowly. Inside, everything was as he left it, save for one thing. A bowl of water sat on his table, smooth and undisturbed. A single silver scale floated on its surface. He stepped back. But again he laughed. "Ah! The spirits are thirsty now. Tell them I sell metal, not water." He emptied the bowl outside and slammed the door. That night, Okiri dreamt of the river. But it wasn't calm and blue like he knew it. It was black, deep, and endless. He stood at its edge, and across from him stood a woman made of water. Her hair like flowing reeds, her eyes glowing like moonlight on wet stones. "You were warned," she whispered, and her voice echoed like 1,000 ripples across the surface. "The river does not forget." When he tried to speak, water filled his mouth. He gasped, only to awaken in his bed, soaked from head to toe. His mat was drenched. His hands were pruned as if he had been submerged for hours. He told no one. But that day, he refused to go near the river. He sent his apprentice, a boy named Nnadozie, to fetch clay from the riverbank. The boy never returned. At first they thought he'd gotten lost. But Nnadozie was no fool. He knew those paths like the veins on his arm. When they found his tools lying by the edge of the river, with no footprints leaving the spot, the village went still. Mama Aweel arrived again, but this time she was not gentle. "You have offended the river, Okiri. The spirits are collecting what you owe." He spat at her feet. "Let them come for me directly then." And so that night they did. Just after moonrise, when even the drums had fallen silent, Okiri heard a knock at his door. Not a loud one. Soft, wet knock. He grabbed his machete and opened it in one swing, but no one was there. He stepped out, scanning the darkness. The frogs were quiet. The crickets had stopped. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then he saw her, the woman from his dream, standing at the path leading to the river. She did not move. Her body shimmered like she was both there and not. He stepped back, but something was pulling him forward. An invisible rope tied around his ribs. "You laughed," she said, her voice soaked in sorrow. "Now listen." Suddenly, the air was filled with sound, not from her, but from the river itself. Screams, thousands, as if the waters were filled with drowning souls, each voice echoing with pain. He covered his ears. He dropped to the ground. And then, silence. She was gone. Okiri could no longer sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he dreamt of drowning, of hands made of water dragging him down, of whispers that slithered into his ears like snakes. He stopped working. He stopped eating. The once proud blacksmith was now a shadow of himself. But the river was not finished. Children in the village began to fall ill. Water in the pots turned muddy overnight. Fish caught by the river were born with two heads, and frogs sang with human voices at midnight. Mama Aweel gathered the elders. "The spirits have cursed us. Until he repents or is claimed, the river will rage." The village gave Okiri one last chance. Cleansing ritual. Sacrifice. An apology. A pride. Pride is a chain that holds tighter than fear. And so he went back to the river. Not with respect. Not with fear. But with a jug of palm wine and a tongue still sharp. He stood at the bend where the sun never touched and shouted into the dark waters. "Come then. Spirit or shadow, ghost or god. I fear nothing born of water." The river did not answer. Not yet. But the wind changed direction. And the birds flew away. They warned him. The spirits spoke. And now the river is awake. As the night thickens and the shadows stretch longer, Okiri must face the consequences of his mockery. But this time it is not in dreams. This time, the river comes for him in the flesh. What lies beneath the water has a name. And it has not forgotten. The moon was heavy in the sky the night Okiri shouted into the river. His voice soaked in defiance. His hands trembling though he would never admit it. The villagers watched from behind their woven fences, barely daring to breathe. None dared stop him. To interfere was to invite the wrath of the spirits upon oneself. The waters did not ripple. The river remained eerily still. It almost looked dead. But silence from spirits is not forgiveness. It is a warning. Okiri turned his back to the river, smiling to himself. See. Nothing but water. But even he noticed the wind no longer blew. The crickets had stopped their nightly song. The trees, ancient and twisted, no longer whispered their leafy chatter. It was as if the whole world had taken one last breath, and held it. He returned home, unaware of the eyes that now watched him from below. That night, sleep was not a gift that visited him. His hut, once warm and filled with the clinks of metal, now sat cold and hollow. The firewood he'd gathered earlier that day refused to burn. The flames curled up and died the moment they were lit. He gave up and lay on his mat, eyes staring at the cracked ceiling, hands resting on his chest. And that's when it began. Sound. It started faint, a dripping like a leaking pot. Drip, drip. He sat up, annoyed. He checked the roof. No holes. He scanned the room. Drip, drip, drip. It was coming from under the mat. With hesitant fingers, he pulled the mat away. The soil beneath was soaked. Not mud, not water, but something thicker. Darker. It smelled of the river at night. Rotten fish. And something else, like blood that had sat too long in the sun. He backed away. The drip stopped. Then a whisper. Not from outside. Not from his door. But from the very soil. "You called us." Before he could scream, the walls of his hut began to sweat. Beads of water rolled down the mud and thatch. His breath became heavy. The air turned damp, thick enough to choke on. He stumbled outside, coughing, but the world outside had changed. The village was gone. Or rather, it had shifted. The familiar paths twisted into overgrown trails. The sky was no longer a calm indigo but a shade of deep green, swirling like something alive. The moon, blood red. And the river was no longer where it used to be. It was everywhere. The fields, the walkways, the trees, all submerged in shallow, glistening water that rippled even without wind. And from the center of it rose a woman, the same from his dreams, her dress made of currents, her arms like flowing reeds. But now she was not alone. Behind her stood figures, tall, faceless beings with arms longer than their bodies. Their heads tilted to one side, and they moved without disturbing the water. Silent, watching. He pointed to Okiri. You laughed at the sacred. You turned your back. Now you will walk where others fear to kneel. He tried to speak, but his throat burned. His knees gave way, and he fell to the water. And that's when the river opened. Not like a wave, not like a storm. The water beneath him split, revealing a staircase of black stone that spiraled downward into the earth. The spirits moved aside, leaving a clear path. Walk, she said, her voice now echoing from within his skull. He didn't want to, but his legs moved, as if not his own. Step by step, Okiri descended into the heart of the river. It was cold, not the cold of air, but the cold of forgotten things. Of places where no sunlight had ever touched. The stairs went on forever, or so it felt. Time stretched. His breaths grew heavy. Carvings lined the walls. Images of men bowing to the river, of creatures rising from its depths, of humans turning into water. And then, finally, he reached the bottom. It opened into a cavern lit by a strange blue glow. Floating orbs of light hung in the air like jellyfish. And in the center, a throne made not of stone or gold, but solid water, frozen mid-flow. Seated upon it was something ancient. Its form was shifting. Sometimes a woman, sometimes a child, sometimes a coiled serpent with 100 eyes. It spoke not with a voice, but with memory. Do you remember the first fish you threw away? It was an offering, Okiri. He shook his head, terrified. Do you remember the dream of drowning? That was our warning. He dropped to his knees. And now? Do you remember the boy? Nnadozie, his apprentice. Okiri felt his chest tighten. Bring him back, he whispered. Please take me instead. The spirits leaned in. You mocked us. You defiled our home. Now, you will carry our mark. The cavern filled with sound. Not screams this time, but a deep, endless chant. Thousands of voices, ancient and layered. Okiri screamed, not from pain, but from the realization that his body was changing. His skin rippled. His legs felt heavy. His breath no longer came from his lungs, but from gills that tore open on the sides of his neck. Water flooded the chamber. The spirits watched. And Okiri began to sink. Morning broke over Obuma. The river was calm again. The children laughed. The fish were normal. The frogs croaked like frogs should. Mama Aweel stood at the river's edge, her staff planted firmly in the soil. She nodded once, then whispered, "Debt repaid." But behind her, the villagers whispered of a strange figure that now appeared at the river during the full moon, a shadow with broad shoulders and empty eyes, forging shapes from river stones and whispering the names of the dead. They say if you listen closely, you can still hear him mutter, "I didn't believe. I didn't believe." The river no longer slept. Though calm on the surface, its depths writhed with a new presence. Not entirely spirit, not entirely man. Okiri the blacksmith had become something else. Down in the Nzu abyss, a hidden realm beneath the mortal world, he toiled. His forge still roared, but it was no fire that fueled it now. It was spiritual flame, pulled from the grief and shame that clung to his soul like wet cloth. He was no longer flesh, not fully. His body was slick with river moss, his eyes the color of stormy tides, and his hands, once strong and proud, now dripped water even in dry air. But he remembered. He remembered the mockery, the warning, the descent. And most of all, he remembered Nnadozie. Each day, or what passed for days in the spirit world, he crafted blades, spears, but not for himself. The river spirits gave him purpose, to arm the warriors of the deep, the guardians of the in-between. He was their smith now. And every time he struck metal, the sound echoed into the living world. Children in Obuma started waking up crying. "The river is calling," they said. Farmers stopped fishing at night. Their nets came back shredded, as if something with teeth had chewed through them. Mama Aweel, the village elder, knew the signs. She'd seen this before, decades ago, when a greedy chief tried to dam the river and was never seen again. But this time was different. She called the villagers. They gathered at the center under the iroko tree, clutching their charms, their wooden idols, and their unease. "Okiri is not lost," she declared. "He is bound. And what is bound can sometimes break free." Okiri hammered with fury. Each blow echoed with pain. Each strike brought visions, of his apprentice laughing, of the river dancing, of his own arrogance. And then one day the spirits brought him something new. A blade, unfinished, cracked, covered in glyphs. "This was the blade of the first drowned," the spirit said, its voice like wind rustling over water. "You must repair it." Okiri held it and felt the memories inside. A warrior once tried to slay the river. He failed. His soul was trapped within the steel. Now the spirits wanted to release it. As Okiri worked, strange visions plagued him. He saw a path back to the surface. He saw Nnadozie, eyes closed, lying in an underwater cave, perfectly preserved, waiting. And worst of all, he saw himself, standing on the shores of Obuma, not as a man, but as a vessel of vengeance. One night, while Okiri slept in the blue glow caverns, a whisper stirred the silence. "Master!" His eyes shot open. The water rippled unnaturally around him. He turned, and there, standing at the edge of the glowing forge, was Nnadozie. But something was wrong. His skin was pale, bloated. His eyes glowed faintly. He wasn't alive. Yet he wasn't dead either. "Why didn't you listen?" the boy asked. Okiri stumbled backward. "I didn't know, I didn't. You forged iron for men. Now you forge fate for spirits. You made fun of the old ways. And now you are trapped in them." And then the boy was gone. But Okiri felt the words etched into his chest, like a wound that would never scab. Back in Obuma, the villagers heard drums. Not the ones beaten by hands, but the earthy, thunderous rhythm that came from under the ground. The animals refused to drink from the river. Birds stopped nesting in trees closest to the water. Mama Aweel began to prepare a ritual. She sent her daughter to fetch a leaf from the yarrow tree, said to be older than time itself. She lit fires and chanted to the orishes of the flow, hoping to calm whatever was coming. But even she could feel it. Something was rising. Okiri finally repaired the blade of the first drowned. As he quenched it in the enchanted waters of the spirit realm, the forge exploded in a blast of steam and shadow. The spirit warriors gathered in silence. The Queen of Currents approached, wearing a crown made of coiled eels and moonlight. "It is done," she whispered. "Now you must carry it." To the boy, Okiri's heart twisted. "Nnadozie! He must take your place, or both of you will be lost forever." Okiri reeled in horror. "No, not again. He's only a child." "So were you when you first mocked us," she replied coldly. He refused. But the blade pulsed in his hands. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, Okiri looked upward, toward the surface. And the river began to boil. Dark clouds gathered. The wind howled. Children clung to their mothers. The animals howled. The frogs croaked in tongues no one had heard since the old gods last walked the earth. Mama Aweel stood at the river's edge, staff raised, her voice lost in prayer. Then the water split, not left and right but up and down, as if a giant hand had dragged a blade through its spine. And from it rose a figure, dripping, shimmering, face hidden beneath a mask of bark and shell. In his hand, the blade. It was Okiri, but no longer the man they knew. A master lost to the depths. A blade forged in grief. And now, a boy lies between the world of the living and the drowned. But when the sins of one are passed to another, who pays the price? The river has chosen, and it will not be denied. Nnadozie's body never decayed. When he vanished beneath the surface years ago, many assumed he was gone, food for fish or swallowed by spirits. But the river had other plans. Deep within a watery cave wrapped in kelp and carved stone, he slept, encased in a cocoon of glowing silt and riverweed. His heart did not beat, yet his spirit hovered, bound between worlds. Now the water churned violently, the surface world trembled, and in the gloom of that sacred cavern, his eyes opened. But he was not the same. Nnadozie gasped, coughing out what felt like years of silence. His fingers clawed against stone, slick with memory and fear. Above him, the shadows moved, curling and coiling into the form of the Queen of Currents, whose eyes were orbs of rippling silver. "You are awake, child. Where am I?" His voice cracked weak. "Between." She reached down and placed her fingers upon his forehead. Suddenly, visions surged through his mind. Okiri falling into the water, spirits dragging him downward, a forge beneath the world, a blade calling his name. And then, finally, Okiri himself, his former master, standing at the river's edge, holding the cursed blade. He cannot carry the burden any longer. "But you are tied to his fate. You always were." Nnadozie wept, but the tears were swallowed by the water before they could even leave his cheeks. Back in Obuma, villagers had scattered like frightened birds. Okiri stood at the shore, silent and unblinking. He wore a robe woven from reeds, bones, and fish scales, and the blade of the first drowned was sheathed across his back, pulsing with a ghostly blue light. Mama Awil approached, her walking stick trembling in her hands. "Okiri." He turned slowly, the movement eerily unnatural. "Mama, you've returned, but not alone." He nodded. "I carry the curse, carry the blade, but it does not belong to me anymore." Behind them, the river rose like a wall, hovering in the air, defying nature, as if held up by divine command. The villagers looked on from their huts and treetops, terrified and awed. "Where is the boy?" Mama Awil whispered. "Coming." Nnadozie swam upwards, pulled not by will but by destiny. His body glowed faintly, water refusing to cling to his skin. As he neared the surface, the murky river parted, making way for him as if welcoming a long-lost king. When he emerged, the wind fell silent. Birds stopped chirping. Even insects stilled. His feet touched the shore. And the moment he looked at Okiri, time itself seemed to hold its breath. They stood face to face, master and apprentice. One alive, one undead, both bound. The villagers dared not speak. Okiri drew the blade slowly, holding it in both hands. Its glow intensified. "This blade carries the scream of the first soul who drowned in pride," he said. "It was reforged in pain. And now it seeks balance." "What does it want?" Nnadozie asked, his voice trembling. "A bearer. A soul not yet fully stained. Someone with the strength to carry what I could not." Nnadozie looked to the blade. Hummed. Whispered. He reached out, but his fingers trembled. "I never wanted this." "Nor did I," Okiri whispered. Then he fell to his knees, holding out the blade like a penitent monk offering his final confession. The river surged behind him, forming symbols in the water, ancient glyphs that only the old gods remembered. Nnadozie stepped forward and took it. The moment his hand gripped the hilt, a shockwave exploded across the village. Crops withered, clay huts cracked, the sky turned an eerie shade of green. And in that instant, Nnadozie was pulled into a vision, a storm of memories not his own. He saw himself through Okiri's eyes. He saw the mocking laughter, the spirits weeping, the flood, the fall, and finally, the regret. When the vision faded, he was crying, not out of pain but understanding. "The blade is yours now," the Queen of Currents whispered behind his ear. "But beware. Does not protect. It tests." Okiri let out a breath he had held for centuries. "I'm free," he whispered. And then his body collapsed. Not violently, but like a tree finally giving in to time. He turned to water, clear, clean, and was gone. The villagers watched as Nnadozie turned toward them, his eyes glowing with a strange duality, part mortal, part spirit. He did not smile. He did not speak. He simply turned and began walking toward the forest. "Where is he going?" a boy whispered. "To carry the weight," Mama Aweel replied, her voice a mix of sorrow and awe. "Until he too finds someone to pass it to." The water calmed. The sky cleared. The birds returned. But from that day on, Obuma would never be the same. Fishermen swore they saw Nnadozie's reflection even when he was nowhere near. Children would sometimes wake up speaking languages no one taught them, tongues of water, salt, and bone. And on the darkest nights, the villagers claimed they could hear a voice calling from the edge of the river. "The blade remembers. Mock it again, and you'll join the drowned." 3 seasons had passed since Nnadozie vanished into the forest, carrying the blade forged from Okiri's regrets. Obuma was quiet, peaceful even. No floods, no hauntings, just whispers. The villagers said he now wandered the sacred groves, a phantom in human skin, speaking only to trees and waters. But then he came, the stranger. He called himself Aramu, tall, wrapped in a traveler's cloak made of dark leather and faded charms. He spoke little but carried a satchel full of bones, human, bird, and something else. Mama Aweel was the first to feel it. "There is death on his breath," she murmured. "But not his own." He wandered the village like a lion that had already chosen its prey. Children hid behind their mothers. Dogs growled. The wind shifted when he passed. When he reached the river, he knelt and whispered into it, not with reverence but command. The water boiled, just for a moment. That night, Aramu sat before the fire, alone but not. Shadows leaned toward him like hungry listeners. He spoke aloud but not to himself. "The boy carries the blade now. But he doesn't understand its true power. You seek to take it," one shadow rasped back. "No. I seek to use it." You see, Aramu was no ordinary man. He was a witch collector, a hunter of cursed objects and ancient relics. He believed the blade could control spirits, not just attract them. To him it was a tool, a weapon, a throne waiting to be claimed. The first drowned gave the blade its scream, "I will give it my name." And the spirits, foolishly, listened. At dawn, Aramu walked into the forest. He left no footprints. Birds stopped singing. Trees leaned away. And yet Nnadozie felt him. The moment Aramu crossed into the sacred groves, the boy awoke from a dream soaked in blood and water. "Something is coming," whispered the Queen of Currents. "I know. He brings ruin. Then let him try." The sacred groves were alive, literally. Trees whispered warnings. Roots shifted to block paths. Ghosts of old warriors blinked in and out of sight. But Aramu pressed on. He spilled chicken blood onto the earth. Burned herbs stolen from forbidden temples. He broke the silence with curses crafted in the tongues of forgotten gods. And still, the forest tried to stop him. One night, he woke up surrounded by water people, children with eyes like tidipools and mouths full of river stones. They sang a lullaby for drowning. He mocked the river, and the river cried. He held the blade, and the spirits died. Now he runs but cannot hide. Aramu simply grinned. "I will burn this forest to the ground." And the children vanished, turning to mist. Nnadozie waited by an ancient rock, The same place he'd seen his master vanish beneath the river years ago. The blade hung on his back, humming low and angry. "He's here," he whispered. Aramu stepped from the mist like a ghost given flesh. "You've grown," he said with a crooked smile. "You haven't," Nnadozie replied. They circled each other, predator and prey. But which was which? "That blade doesn't belong to you," Aramu said. "It didn't belong to my master either. It doesn't belong to anyone." "Then let me show you how to use it." "No." Aramu lunged, faster than thought. His charms flared. Bones flew from his satchel, forming a jagged spear of ivory and sinew. Nnadozie ducked, rolled, drew the blade. And the forest screamed. The blade met bone. Sparks and spirits exploded in all directions. Trees caught fire without burning. Water levitated and struck like spears. Aramu summoned a demon made from drowned regrets. Nnadozie countered with the blade's scream, a wave of sorrow so intense the demon crumbled into mist. "You don't understand what you're wielding," Aramu snarled. "You don't respect what you're chasing." Nnadozie roared back. But the blade grew heavy. Each strike drained him. Each scream echoed too loudly in his soul. "It wants a master," Aramu whispered. "It wants peace," Nnadozie replied. And then, he did the unthinkable. As Aramu raised his final spell, a storm of bone and fire, Nnadozie plunged the blade into the earth. Not to fight, but to end it. The blade sank deep, piercing the root of the sacred rock. And from the wound the river rose, not in water but spirits. Hundreds of them. The drowned, the forgotten, the mocked. They poured from the ground, the trees, the sky. Aramu screamed as they dragged him backward, into a whirlpool of memories he did not own, regrets he never earned. "No, I am the master." The spirits disagreed. He vanished, swallowed by sorrow and justice, forever claimed. Nnadozie collapsed. The forest quieted. The blade, now buried, stopped humming. The Queen of Currents appeared, her form gentle now. "You could have used its power." "Power doesn't interest me. Peace does. You are wiser than your master." She touched his shoulder. "The blade sleeps. Let it sleep forever." Nnadozie returned to Obuma. Only once. To place a stone at the river's edge. On it he carved a simple message. "Mock not the river, lest it mock you louder." Then he vanished again, not into exile but into legend. Some say he became a river god himself. Others believe he turned into a tree, rooted forever where the blade sleeps. But one thing remains true. The river remembers. It always remembers. If you ever find yourself by a quiet river, don't throw stones. Don't whisper names. And above all, don't laugh. The water listens. And when the river speaks, you must listen back. Lest your story become the next tale told beneath the waves.